I don't like psychology, and I think it's a fundamental problem within our culture today, and I think it's affecting a lot of people in a more negative way than it ever has garnered for any form of positivity in people's lives. And what I'm talking about is more in regards to modern psychology, popular psychology, clinical psychology, talk therapy. I think it's bad for a lot of people. I think it's affecting a lot of people, and I think it's traumatized people, especially when they're younger. Everyone seems to have a story to tell when it comes down to being labelled, being categorised, not being understood. It's always been a thing for everybody to have a story to tell about either being labelled, being mismanaged when younger, when it comes to being understood. For example, I'll give you my own personal example. When I was very young, I was regarded as someone with dyslexia, and this massively affected my self-perception, and then it caused people around the categorization of dyslexia to treat me as if I was an idiot, and treat me as if I was basically someone who was incapable, someone who was in a vegetative state, intellectually and physically. It was very strange. And this is the power of categorization, the power of not understanding people and putting them into boxes. And it causes a fundamental change in the way people are treated with each other. For example, when I was younger, they would not regard me as someone who was capable or someone who had any potential in a way, and this is fundamentally disgusting. People have to deal with this on a daily basis even now, with people who even were in worse situations, people who were put in institutions, people who were given these categorizations of you are this, you are that. Psychology, modern psychology, fundamentally depersonalizes you and the understanding of who you are, and it puts you into a box, a cookie cutter box, in which is then funneled through a pharmaceutical industry complex, where you are then given drugs so that you are then manipulated to believe that you are not good enough, or for you to believe that you are faulty. And this is absolutely one of the most dangerous things that is in our culture today, and is causing most people to have insecurities, have anxieties about their own self-image, fears, stresses. I would say a lot of people have actually developed traumas from psychology, or from the attempt of psychology being infused into their lives as a way of helping people, helping them. I think it's absolutely disgusting, and I absolutely do not advocate mainstream psychology. I think it's terrible. And you also even see how these faulty perceptions in which are used to categorize people has now started to infuse into the culture of relational development, people relating with each other. You always hear the term narcissism, you hear the term empathy or empaths, and you hear these psychological terms which are used in the culture of today. And the problem with this is you then create the phenomena of psychologizing people. People start to psychologize others on a projection of what they believe is wrong with them. And this is usually always the case. For example, someone on the channel commented, because of my own confidence and lacking of indifference with having an opinion about something, someone said that I was a cerebral narcissist and a schizophrenic. And then they were saying, oh, this person, you wouldn't really be able to understand if they were a schizoid, because you'd have to know them and have to be with them and kind of see beyond their behaviors, all of this rubbish. Because these people, the problem with this is because, as you can see, they are regarding a positive attribute of being confident, outspoken, and opinionated, which are good things, good traits, as bad things by psychologizing the individual with negative characterizations of a cerebral narcissist. It's the application of these terms which is so dangerous, because it reduces the actual meaning of why they were made to begin with. You should never use terms which are used by therapists to diagnose people, to try and understand someone else, without even being able or having the opportunity to truly understand who they are. People projecting in the comments, or with that comment example, trying to understand who I am when you don't know who I am because you've never met me and you've never had a conversation with me and you've never been able to relate with me on a personal level, is hilarious. Because it's not hilarious, it's hilarious because it's foolish and stupid, but it's also dangerous, because people with that attitude, it shows a lot of projections, maybe in forms of jealousy, superiority complexes that maybe those individuals may have when seeing other people. They see them as maybe inferior and therefore they psychologize them. So therefore maybe the individuals who do that are actually more likely to be the narcissists. But ultimately, everything is nuanced. Nothing is black and white. And this is another thing psychology does, is that it puts us into a black and white framework where you are this or that. And the whole process also of, I'm not very much an advocate of talk therapy either, because I don't think it's philosophically sound when it comes to the mind and the body. It's all about the mind. Talk. And that is supposed to be therapeutic. When really something that's therapeutic is the intermingling of the mind and body through action. Action and performing action is therapeutic to oneself. Because as much as even people could, to some degree, use talk therapy over a long period of time as an excuse of not actually doing any of the real work in the real world and actually putting the action out there, the therapist in some way simply is there to make money, and they are actually not really have your best interests at heart. They just ask you questions. Well, what's the problem with this? Why are you suffering from this? Why is this? Why is this? And it's a continuous conversation of one-sidedness, because, well, let's talk about the therapist. What's the therapist's problem? What do they suffer with? They're probably not going to talk about that. They simply just want you to talk continuously about your issues, and it's one-sided. And ultimately, this probably, for a lot of people, creates a mental gymnasium and avoids the physical gymnasium, the physical world, the bodily world, the intermingling of the mind and body so that action is made and change actually occurs. The only way you can find out if change is actually happening in your life is by observing your environment and what is changing within you and around you. If nothing is changing fundamentally, then you're not performing any actions. So therefore, if you're constantly going back to these people talking over years and years while they, grift away and poach any kind of money from your wallet and from your bank account, if there's no actual change happening and you're sitting there complaining about your life and all these insecurities that you have, and nothing has changed, it's because no action is actually being made in the real world in relation to you and your own self-development to actually change these things that you're suffering from within your mind and worried about. So, and hopefully there is a good degree of psychologists that actually aid towards this growth of actually doing things in the physical world to help you move on from your problems. Hopefully that is the case. Obviously there are good psychologists, good therapists, good people, obviously. But I think on a large scale that psychology, modern psychology, mainstream psychology, affects people in a more negative way than it should. It's not a discipline. It's not a science. There are no answers. And that is a good thing, because the answer has to be found through oneself, through one's own self-discovery. But the way in which that is understood and taught is incorrect. People are not taught the right way of finding that path within, and how to articulate that path within themselves. And this even relates to Mayhem Society, because it's like, with Mayhem Society, we don't want therapists on there. We want coaches who work in the real world, because coaches who are in finance, coaches who are in nutrition, personal training, mindfulness techniques, all of these things, creativity, mindset orientation, forms of NLP, life skills, all this type of stuff, they are not people who just sit down and want to talk with you. It's actually an encouragement, and we would be and will be encouraging people to go out into their lives and actually make real world change, and not simply just talk about problems all the time. Go get punched in the face at the boxing gym. It will do you good. That's why Fight Club is such a famous, popular film, a culty film in a way, because there's a fundamental value that is taught in that film or Fight Club. A fundamental principle that is based within Mayhem Society when we launch it, probably at the beginning of next month, is that the mind needs to be carried with a physical frame. The mental mind needs to be carried with a physical frame. And this helps and occupies a space for the development of confidence, discipline, and integrity for a lot of people who are struggling with those issues. And that is a fundamental principle we will be teaching, that all the coaches will be applying through their work, whether it be any discipline that's involved in Mayhem Society. And so yeah, that's kind of like a little piece on my opinion about psychology in general. Some fundamental issues with it. It's not a fundamental discipline. If it doesn't root itself back into philosophy, then it's kind of useless, because it doesn't have a fundamental framework. I'm sorry about the noise. I can't do anything about it. I usually always talk about, as well, psychologists or psychotherapists or people in that psychodynamic world, like Jung, Wilhelm Reich, a bit of Freud, because there's a fundamental philosophy embedded in their work. And that philosophy is in some sense holistic and understood. You know, if you don't have philosophy as the fundamental root of discipline, then there is a fundamental problem with that, because everything comes back to philosophy, metaphysics, ontology, all of these things. Understanding the world. Where are we? Where do we live? What are we doing? What is our purpose? What are values? What are our principles? All of these things. And if there is no root fundamentally back to philosophy, then what you are studying or what you are trying to articulate into and for you to be part of in your own life is probably going to be rubbish or incorrect. So if you're interested in applying and forwarding your application forms onto Mayhem Society, which is a program for self-development and transformation for young men who are serious about self-transformation, go in the link in the description, mayhemsociety.com. You'll be able to forward an application form and it will get back to you as soon as possible. So thank you. There's only 20 seats available, and we have definitely a large amount of applications we're going through at the moment. So make sure you get them forward as soon as possible so that we can arrange a call with you and get you in.